Folks, welcome to part 2 of this episode with Mr. Niall Graham. I'm assuming if you're here, you've listened to part 1 already. This is a continuation, the second half of a fascinating conversation with this interesting, educated, experienced man on ritual, identity, sexuality, empowerment, masculinity, femininity, and so much more. So please dive in and enjoy, and thank you very much. Remember, guys, Niall is running his workshop for men, Strong Warrior, Sensitive Heart, on Sunday, the 20th of March from 2 to 6 p.m. And he is offering a 20% discount for anybody who is interested who listens to the Prymal podcast. Just email niall.graham@hotmail.com or book through Niall's website, niallgraham.ie, using the code PRYMAL20 for 20% off. And remember, folks, this episode is sponsored by Flotation Therapy Ireland. Mr. Adam Ward, the owner of the company, has offered 15% off to anybody who wants to try out a float in either one of his 2 locations in either Malahide Marina or Chancery Lane in Dublin. Just mention the podcast, myself or Prymal for 15% off your float, and enjoy. Welcome to our shared journey to find the answers to questions about health, wellness, nutrition, performance, life and success, and to craft the most resilient, hardy and happy humans you've ever seen. Welcome to the Prymal podcast. We're following this path nicely now. Would you like to delve into the sexuality piece?
Yes. There are other parts here that let's delve into it a little bit. I'm not sure how it's going to wind because this is also a very
deep.
It's deep, yeah. Yes. So there's 2 parts to this that are going to emerge here. There's the cultural aspect that needs to be addressed, which will lead into the sexual aspect that needs to be addressed, okay?
Okay.
So looking at, I'm just going to kind of frame this a little bit as well.
Yeah.
Like as I really sit in consciousness, then there's an emergence, and I think this is what I'm enjoying about being a masculine identified being, that I can sit in that emergence as it's appearing through me. So the information that's trying to come through me now is like understanding that there are different frameworks in both the East and the West, okay? So in the West, for instance, at the moment, we have an association with masculine and feminine, and we potentially have an association between the masculine being like our head, our logical thinking and our wanting to get shit done, all that sort of stuff. And so our aspiration as humans in the West then is trying to get down to our heart. We're more connected to ourselves. We're more connected to other individuals. And that's maybe the feminine aspect. Now in the East, if you go back to the framework then of whenever we're born into this world, that whenever we connect to the uterine lining in our mother, that the center of our consciousness comes from this umbilical cord, which is connected to the womb. The central point of where we come from is consciousness itself. So in the East, they say that the center of our being is in the abdomen. It's down in the hara, it's down in the dantian. So in Japanese culture and Chinese culture, they're trying to get down there as the center point of self. Now, coming back to the context of the masculine and the feminine, for me, the masculine is consciousness itself. We think about the fetus of the child. That's when we first get the spark of life comes through our umbilical cords, comes through this area, spark of life. But our sense of love, our sense of matter, our sense of being in the world comes from our sense of heart. So if we're able to identify where these energies are in the body, then we can start to work with that. As men then, coming back to before, I was really encouraged to be in my heart more, to be in my own sense of compassion, to be in my own sense of love, to be in my own sense of connection. That didn't work for me for a long time because there were whole other parts of my psyche that were trying to get online. The part of me that wanted to fucking annihilate people, the aggressive part of me, the violent part of me. And that wasn't coming from my heart. That was coming from a deeper place in me, So things really started to change for me when I started to work on this idea of the hara, the dantian, and going down into the body and working with soul and working with my own aggression. And I said to you this to you before, I did a lot of BDSM stuff over the years as well. It's like, how do we work into this idea of sub-dom stuff? What is that? What is the energy of that dominance? What is the power of that deep, dark masculine that's trying to live out into the world? And that involved me going into the depths of myself. And from that point then, through this framework of what John Wineland talks about, he said, consciousness is based in our belly. It's based in our hara. So for masculine and identified men, then the belly or the abdomen is our positive polarity. For feminine identified women or men, the positive polarity, their sense of power, connection, and presence comes from their heart. And for me, when I meet a woman who's fully in her heart and her heart is open, the most attractive, beautiful thing, and there's real power in her and real presence in her, So I think as men, in general, and in Ireland, we need to be going way, way, way down into consciousness. We need to be cultivating, how do we drop into this sense of consciousness? How do we drop into this sense of like full masculine being? That involves an initiation. That involves a descent. That involves with dealing with our own sexual repression. And the thing is that I think that we're scared to go there because the masculine, the men, over many, many centuries were trained to be fucking killers. We were trained to annihilate other men. We were trained to dominate other cultures. We were trained to rape and to pillage, and that's still in our psyches. And with that, the only way that you can truly rape, pillage, fuck up people, take them hostage, dismember them, is to disconnect from our heart.
Okay.
We can't fully do that as men in this world and with a fully open heart. Now, in some indigenous cultures, they can. If they're going to sacrifice an animal, they will do it with a full and open heart because they understand the necessity of that. But we as men over years, it's part of our psyche. We were killers. We were trained to be killers. So I think that we need to go down into that killer part of us. And that's the only way that we can fully start to embrace our heart again and go through the healing of the heart. So my journey at the moment is to go down into that deeper aspect of myself, down into my consciousness, down into my hara, do the work, do the healing, using breath work, using hara meditations and so on, to go through and start to reintegrate the power that's in me. And from there, then I can, so the way I imagine this is if I can really open up the lower parts of my body, start to own the killer part of me, start to own the part of me that wants to dominate, wants to control, that power that I'm not fully accepting in myself and therefore is being played out in the world in a negative way. If I can really hold that and create a container in my own self, a container of presence, then that's the only way that my heart can fully drop in. That's the only way that I can fully heal myself. And I've been with incredible women over the years with very open hearts where I start to feel my own vulnerability. But I also think that we need to be starting to cultivate that ourselves because our way to our heart as men is through our balls, is through cultivating that connection with the lower parts of our body, because that's where our power is. If we're going to go straight to our heart, that's not our power aspect. So we need to go down into, start owning all that shit, all the fucking shadow stuff. And that's, and that's where my heart is really able to open now from that place. As women in society, if we have all this shit that's been played out, all this power dynamics, all this power, repressed power, and that's being played out on a day-to-day basis, they're never going to be safe in themselves to be able to fully drop into their hearts and fully trust men.
Yeah.
So we have a responsibility as men who made this decision to be killers in this world for whatever reasons, for dominance of culture. There's a whole other stories about how we ended up in this mess. We have a responsibility to go back and own that power within us and use that power in a healthy way to support our own sense of feminine and the feminine in the world around us through women and so on, so that true healing can happen. And there's a lot of women in this world who are looking for that presence of a man. They're looking for the safety of the masculine so that they can drop into this container and let their hearts fully heal from this trauma of the past, where they were fucking raped, where they were violently abused for hundreds and hundreds of years. So there's huge trauma in the psyche with this. So that's my work at the moment, is how do we go into the deeper aspects of ourselves? So maybe I can go on to sexuality now, or I don't know if you want to say anything.
I just want to, because there's a very important comment I want to make and acknowledge. Obviously, there's a lot of parallels between what you're saying and what a lot of people would be familiar with on a certain level.
Yes.
Obviously, at the time of this recording, there's a lot of really horrible things happening.
Sure.
That poor girl, Aisling Murphy, was
Yes.
murdered, and there's every time something like this happens, which is very regularly, there's an outpouring of outrage and emotion, and there's obviously a lot of women who are very upset and are expressing trauma and reaction to this and emotion to this. And there's a lot of men who resist that then, and you get this confrontational conversation like we've alluded to earlier on. And interestingly, when I spoke to you about this on the phone, within 2 days, I had heard 2 other conversations. One was with Dr. Rena O'Leary, who was she was in here on a different podcast, and I was listening to it. And she's a forensic psychologist who deals specifically with violent and sexual male offenders. And another one was a conversation I just happened to hear with somebody else. And in all 3 of the conversations, with me and you, with Rena, and with this other conversation, they all said the exact same thing in different ways about a person, a man, because it is, in the vast majority of cases, men who do this.
Yeah.
A man who does something like this is not the embodiment of an over-manly man.
Yeah.
It's a man who's missing.
Unhealthy.
An unhealthy man.
Yes.
And in the history, I've always thought about this, never with the kind of intellectual kind of guidelines you've given me there, but a man who does something terrible to other people, women or other men, is not a healthy man.
No.
Because my understanding of a healthy man is somebody who embodies this sense of strength and internal comfort with themselves as a man. A harnessing, we have lethal abilities as men. We're physically stronger and able to dominate people who are weaker, men and women. And we need to understand that, accept it, and control it healthily. Not control as in like down, bad boy. What's the word I'm looking for? Embody it correctly, or channel it. Channel it is a better word. Not control. I don't like the word control.
Yeah.
When something like this happens and you see a man kill a woman or a man rape a woman, it traumatizes me to my core, because I can't imagine doing that to a woman. I can't imagine. I have a daughter. I have sisters. It really hurts me to see that. But then there's an immediate narrative of we need to educate men to be more respectful of women because they're not. And I'm like, well, hold on a second here now. I agree that was a despicable act by a man who abused his power over a woman, but I don't think that guy was healthy. I don't think he was doing this from a place of, I am a strong, powerful man and I will dominate this woman. I don't see that. I think this man was missing something. I think the likes of people who abuse positions of power are missing something.
Yeah.
They're missing something that doesn't allow them to have perspective on, I shouldn't dominate this person. I should look for connection. I should look for I don't know what the word I'm looking for here is, but I should look for more with this person. Maybe I do want a sexual relationship with this person, but I should look for that from a place of love and connection and coexistence, and not I'm going to dominate this person. So when we have this conversation, and as rightfully so, an outrage from women, an emotional fear, outrage, all this kind of stuff, I understand that. But again, the conversations are misdirected. So when you speak like you have now, for me, that's much more helpful. If we can understand as men and women, as masculine and feminine, that there's something wrong with that person who does something like that.
Yeah.
But it's not the thing that we think it is. We're being too superficial about this.
Yes.
We need to go deeper and understand. Dr. Rena O'Leary said this exact same thing. She said these people need healing.
Yes.
They need
They're traumatized.
help.
They're traumatized individuals.
Yeah, and like it was,
and that doesn't excuse it in
Not at
any way.
all.
And also, I just want to say one note on that. The reaction from women is absolutely natural, and I would say it's triggering this hundreds of years of trauma.
Absolutely.
So what that trauma is looking for is like, look at me, look at the thing that's alive in society that nobody's fucking looking at here.
Yeah, 100%. Absolutely, yeah. And I do want to be really sensitive to this here because it confuses me as a man to be met by this maelstrom of hate and anger, and I'm already dealing with that myself on the inside. I'm already conflicted as a man. I'm trying to work through what it is to be a man, and then I'm getting this whole. And I understand it. I know where it's coming from, but it's very hard to deal with. So, as I said before, you get these reactions from men where they either get massive resistance and pushback and fuck this, or complete subversion and acceptance.
Well, so for me, that's in both men and women. Then that's how we relate to our own masculine. And if we have a very fucking unhealthy masculine in ourselves, then whenever those situation happens, then it brings up our own relationship with our own masculine.
Yeah.
So like that's the kind of learning in this. I think as a society, it's really important that we start to look at, toxic masculinity, break it down from just as an umbrella term and look at the specifics of it and say toxic masculinity is traumatized men who are acting out things that they don't know how to deal with themselves. These deep sexual ideas, the need to control, dominate, to murder, to do whatever is something in the psyche that, when we talk about the subconscious, it's something that is emerging, through them. I don't know if they even have a choice within that, you know what I mean? On some level, they have to take full responsibility of it. But it's as a society, we're not delving into this enough,
Yeah, and actually, you literally just took the words out of my mouth there, because I'm envisioning this tribe, this Dunbar's number, 150 people live together, coexist. You've got hunters, you've got gatherers, you've got people taking care of children. If a man, or a woman, but a man, because it's higher incidences by far in men, if a man in that tribe started to murder or rape women in that tribe, or abuse children or anything like that, they would immediately be dealt with by all of the other people in the tribe. Because that is not healthy for a tribe. To have an individual like that is not how the tribe coexists. The men, as we've spoken about, have had their initiation. They coexist as men, the women coexist as women, and the men and women coexist as men and women. And if you have an individual like that who threatens the life or the health, the safety of security of women or men or children in that group, they're probably killed or they're exiled. They're kicked out of that group. Today, we've a really weird thing happening where some of these men are in positions where they can't be held accountable. So we can't,
in terms of Jeffrey Epstein, or
have the Harveys and all these kind of people,
and thankfully that's changing as well.
When I hear this argument, I agree with women and men saying we have to change that. That is a problem. But it's a much deeper problem than just telling men no. Tell them to respect women. I do respect women, but I have conflict with my own sense of masculinity. I think that's my problem. And I think why I react defensively when a woman says this to me is because I have an issue with my own sense of masculinity. It's not because I think that I should have more pay than women. I absolutely don't agree with that at all. Or I should be allowed to dominate women because I'm a man. I completely disagree with that. But I'm also at conflict with my own sense of masculinity. So when a woman says that to me, my initial reaction is, fuck off. It's not all men, all these kind of things. I don't entirely agree with the argument, but I completely agree. If you have an Epstein or a Harvey Weinstein, is it Stein or Steen? Weinstein, or a person in a position like that, they need to be dealt with.
Absolutely.
But it's like you said, it's not an umbrella problem. There's so many facets and nuances to this. It wouldn't happen in a small tribe. These people are almost unaccountable, but it is changing, and I like that change. But I don't like a lot of the excess stuff that comes with that change.
Like, and the key to this is in terms of what we started this conversation around is about you recognizing that you have difficulty with your own identification with your masculine. So that's what we can do on an individual basis. So I can get really fucking angry with the world and blame all that shit. But once you start to identify that you have a difficulty with your own masculinity, your own relationship with that, that's your responsibility. You can work with that then. And we can work on a society level and go,
it needs both.
It needs both.
100%.
But I think that for those of us, because we live in such an external society, for those of us then who aren't able to do the work and recognize and have the support to recognize what is this pain in you, then we end up getting very, very vexed with the world. Things need to change, absolutely. But if we're not owning our own stuff in here, nothing will actually change. We'll be putting fucking plasters all over fucking society. What's what we're doing? We're chucking people into prison. We're not dealing with anything here. So I want to bring this back a little bit because I want to introduce the other side. So this is very, very important. And I also don't want to speak on behalf of women in terms of their reaction to a man fucking murdering a woman.
Yeah.
Because I actually, on some level, I don't even know what that feels like as a woman because I don't have a woman's body, and I think those traumas are probably alive in me in some ways, but I don't think that I can really speak to that. So I'm going to bring it back to my own struggle with being a masculine identified man. So my issue was around my own femininity and my own sense of love. And I spent a lot of time resisting love, resisting connection, and really playing and acting out the lone wolf in this world. I'm on my fucking own. I'm going to fucking get through this world, doing my own thing. And so that was my own trauma around my own heart, of how I was brought up. And so I, in my own self then, because I was cut off of my heart, then I had my own anger around the feminine. I had my own anger around women because of my own internal dynamics and my own separation, trauma from my own heart, from my own sense of love, from my own sense of life. So I projected that shit out into the world. I projected that shit out onto women and so on, you know what I mean? And blaming women for my own sense of discomfort, and I had real difficulties in connecting with women. They're very demanding, or it's their fault that I'm feeling the way that I'm feeling. And what I'm realizing through this work as I go deeper into my own sense of self, it's my own pain from my own connection from my own heart.
Yeah.
From my own desire to want to connect. And then I fucking project onto the world or onto women and judge them and say, oh, they're too needy or whatever. It's my own fucking neediness in my own heart,
I'm smiling because I have a story I spoke to, and I won't name any names just out of respect, but I spoke to a woman quite recently about a situation that really paints this picture nicely and people might recognize this situation. Is she was approached in a club by a man that she didn't have an interest in, and he had an interest in her, and he made a move or whatever, and she said, "Oh," and quite polite, "Oh, I'm sorry, I'm not interested." Didn't shoot him down or anything like that, but his reaction was, "What the fuck are you going around looking so good for then? Like, why are you putting it out there?" And she said this to me, and immediately I because I'm in this zone now and having all these conversations, that only meant one thing to me. I was like, that man, you triggered something about that man that is not about you or you wearing your clothes or being beautiful or putting this energy out there, or you didn't invite that. That man that's just triggered a trauma or a lack of understanding or a lack of confidence or a lack of connection with something in him that was, you embodied that for him when you rejected him. His sense of rejection went into overdrive, and he just externalized that. It's your fucking fault. I feel bad. It's your fault. It's your fault. It's your fault. And I was like, that was what that interaction was.
So there was a rejection going on internally for him.
Yeah, that he probably had not dealt with his own sense of rejection from years, or there was something. It's
so when we start to then heal ourselves and start to come to terms with those aspects of ourselves, then being in that situation potentially is like, I have an attraction towards you. How do you feel about me? Do you want to get jiggy? Do you know?
Is that your line?
If that's my line.
Hello, I have an attraction towards you.
That's why I'm single,
Fair, yeah.
And then we have that possibility of if we're okay in ourselves, that we can really receive whatever answer wants to happen. If she's like, no, I'm sorry, I'm not interested, we're like, okay, that's cool. Do you know?
Yeah.
And then we can actually start to have amazing interactions with other people when we really start to develop our own sense of healthiness in our own bodies, that we're not getting triggered by other people's reactions. And that's a very, coming back to toxic masculinity again. What right has any man to say that there's something fucked up about a woman saying no to them? That's fucked up. When we really take some awareness around that, and that's the society that we live in on some levels.
Can I give a caveat to that? Because I know, because I had this reaction immediately there. You explained that ideal interaction should be, hello, I'm attracted to you. Oh, I'm sorry, I'm not attracted to you. Okay, we can still be fine. Shake hands, happy people, off we go. That's how it should be. Yeah. I think on the journey to that, you're allowed to feel that rejection, but you are in control of how you respond.
Sure.
So if I get rejected, don't get me wrong, I don't know if there's ever going to be a time where it doesn't hurt me to be rejected by something, by anything. You want a job, you want a partner, you want anything, and you get rejected. That's going to sting because we're not robots. You're going to have an emotional reaction.
Absolutely.
But I think an awareness of that, allow it to happen, And then you control your response, because your response will dictate how that person responds to you, and you can build a better energy with that person. So, oh, I'm sorry, Dan, I'm not interested. And I'll be like, oh, that was a punch to the gut. Give it a second. Okay, no problem. And I can say the words, and I can practice being a good person and learn more about why I had that response, maybe, and go away and think about, why did you feel so rejected by that? And I can do my own work, but in the moment, I don't have to be a prick and say, well, you know what, fuck you. I can do both at the same time, because I have 30 odd years of programming here. If I go out tomorrow and get rejected, I can't tell you that I'm going to actually feel okay with that. I'm going to feel rejected, but what I can do is I can feel that, and then I can let that go and not allow that to dictate how I respond to this person.
Yeah, and there's something that you said there is about, I can still be a good person.
Yeah.
Now, I quite reactive to that, whereas this is my own stuff, you know.
Okay, yeah.
About being a good boy whenever I was young.
Oh, okay,
you know?
yeah.
And so in some ways, it's like, it's not about being a good person anymore. It's not about being nice guy anymore. It's about being real and authentic, you know, and being self-responsible for our own triggers, for our own emotionals, and being understanding of our own traumas and developing awareness. So it's about being a real and authentic and aware human, a conscious human, you know.
I suppose when I say the word good, I know you had a reaction. I don't mean it when I say it. Maybe I should communicate about it as be a good boy and keep everyone happy.
Sure.
I live my life by the opposite thread. I'm not here to keep everyone happy, but I am here to ensure. I don't want to overtly, intentionally hurt another person by saying, well, fuck you. And I don't want to just get along with that person. If we don't get along, we don't get along. There's no skin off my back. But I want to be a person who really lives what I believe. And to me, that is a good person. It's not good in the sense of, oh, everyone thinks I'm a good guy. If people don't think I'm a good guy, that's their thing. If I don't think I'm a good guy,
that's a different
that's
thing.
a problem. So when I say I want to be a good person, my definition of what a good person is what I want to be, not anyone else's definition. Because some people don't like me, and that's okay.
And it's good to it's good to clarify these things, you know. And this is what we do. This is a prime example of what we do in men's work here. You say good, I have a trigger. I have to own my own trigger, and then you clarify what you actually meant. And we both get a deeper understanding of where the other person comes from. And this is important. And we need to be having more of these conversations. We need to be challenging each other. We need to be clarifying with each other, like, what we mean about stuff. And that's how we develop. Like, whenever we started this organization called Tribe, we had about 6 or 7 men. It was originally started. This is going a little bit off course here, but we're going to come back. And we were in this group together, and we started doing a lot of work. Now, just to be a little bit clear about what work is, it's about looking at the shadow aspects of being a man, or shadow aspects of being a human, like, primarily. So we had created this small group of 6 or 7 people. We did some work together. We started to see other men's shadows. And then we invited like 11, 12, 13 new people on board, because the organization was expanding. For the first 2 months of that, then these new people, then we did something quite light. We were looking at the archetypes, the lover, the warrior, the magician, king, how these impact men, and so on. I spoke to one of the original members of Tribe, and he was just like, I'm not feeling it. I'm not getting it. I don't trust these new. I wish I really liked it before, whenever we were just a small group or whatever. And I'm feeling really uncomfortable. I don't like some of these guys. You know, so all the like shadowy stuff was in the background with him. But what I realized in the moment is, if men don't see the shadow that's playing out in other men, they will not fucking trust them. And that was a really informative for me as leading this group. Is like, we're going to start doing work now. And from the next week, then we started doing work. Who's going to own their shadow around this shit? What's at play here? What's the accountability piece here? Who has charges with another man here? And what are the judgments around that? And what are the feelings that are coming up around that? And he started to settle back in again. Men need to do work together. We need to start looking at the deeper parts of our own consciousness that are playing out on other men, that are playing out on other women. And the shadow aspects of society, it needs to be fucking addressed now. And this is what we're doing in men's groups.
Dara Stewart mentioned something to me about brother wounds. And I struggled with it for a while. I struggled with it for a while. And I tried to apply it to the context of my own life. That's all I can do, because I can't do it for the people. And it made so much sense to me then. I eventually,
can you elaborate a little bit just for me?
So he said to me, we're traumatizing each other. So apart from our own trauma, we're traumatizing each other. And again, I'm speaking specifically from a male point of view here. It's all I have. We grow up in a society now where we're in direct competition with each other, we think.
We think, yeah.
We think.
Yeah.
I think I'm in competition with you.
Sure.
You walk in here, I size you up.
Sure.
How big is he? Could I take him in a fight?
Yeah.
How much money does he make? What car did he drive in here? And with every one of those thoughts I'm having, all I'm doing is hurting myself.
Sure.
But I will then do things because of my own reaction, my own perceived threat from having you here as another man. I will do things to you to restore the balance, perceived balance in my head. So I'll act in a different way around you. And then you'll take all those things and you'll do the exact same thing. And we'll create this shitty soup of me and you are supposed to be mates, friends. Like we might have known each other for 20 years, but we are just constantly then in this attack defend mode.
Well, we're knocking cocks off each other.
100%. Yeah, we are trying in the nicest way possible, because we're all lovely people. We're trying to undermine each other, cut each other down at the knees, make each other look bad, because by comparison I look good and that makes me more of a man. But I like you're my friend. But it's a subtext. And when he said brother wound to me, I was challenged so much by that, because I don't do that to people. They don't do that to me. And then I was like, hold on a fucking second.
Yeah.
Yes, you do.
Yeah.
All the time, consistently.
Yeah.
So this idea of we are brothers and we're wounding each other, as well as everything we spoke about today, external porn, marketing, issues with men and women, we're actually doing it to each other as well. So this idea of men's groups and holding space and giving a man, and a different conversation, a woman, because they need this as well, space and an opportunity to see that that brother that you were wounding and was wounding you actually is dealing with the same thing.
Same stuff,
It's the same stuff.
Sure.
Different triggers, different contexts, it's the same thing.
Yeah.
And as soon as I got that, I was like, it still happens to me. But now I'm so much more awareness, again, it's this awareness thing. I'm so much more aware and I feel such a deeper level of connection with other men. I still have moments, I had one 2 weeks ago, where I get significantly wobbled by the success of another person, undermines everything about me as a man. But I'm aware of it. I work through that. Why am I triggered? Why am I so upset? Why is it so? And then I come back. And so it does not happen to me. It happens to me all the time. But now I just have a little bit more awareness around it. And now I can see when I come through that process, like, wow, that really kicks me in the bollocks here.
Yeah.
Why?
Yeah.
Where's it coming from?
Good.
Where?
Good.
And when you have these groups of men who can sit down, and I'm sure, I don't know, because actually with all my talk about this, I've never actually been to a men's circle or men's group, but I'm imagining, and you can tell me if I'm wrong, there's an initial period of everyone looking at each other sideways. Who the fuck is your man? What did he drive in? What clothes is he wearing?
Yeah, the judgments.
Yeah. But then you, as the facilitator or tribe or the group, hold enough space and are experienced enough to allow these men to work through that initial phase and get into something deeper and start to understand this and work through this on an individual, but also, as you've mentioned, on a collective group level as well.
Yeah.
That's powerful. And
it's cultivating brotherhood.
Yeah.
You know, as you're saying, there's a brother wound.
Yeah.
So what we're trying to do is the opposite, cultivating brotherhood, where you can really fucking lean into another man. Like, there are so many men on this island now and in England that I can really speak to, ask for support, lean on, and another part of that is be challenged on. Like, myself and Pat, like, we spend quite a lot of time with each other, and we're kind of reflecting to each other as well, and we challenge each other. You know, this is that thing that you do. You know, So whenever we really have brothers that we go through this kind of shadowy work together, then we can really start to support each other. And support each other in a good way, like in challenging each other. That's what I refer to as a good way. Challenging each other, calling each other out on our shit, because we can't see our shadows. That's the whole point of shadow. It's kind of hanging back there somewhere. You know?
Yeah. How did we go down that road? I don't even remember.
I don't know. But what the parts that are important to me is the competition aspect of men comes from disempowerment.
Yeah.
So that's what I'm interested in. How do we get back into empowerment as men? How do we reach down into our balls? And what are the factors that influence that? So that's what my work is at the moment. Yeah?
Okay, yeah. And just in the context of everything that you've said so far, I feel like you've given us a really, really nice, because you mentioned there our powers and our balls, and many people will hear that and be really uncomfortable. They'll be really... they'll have different types of reaction to it that are not the reaction that we necessarily want.
Yeah.
But with all of the context of everything we've spoken about in terms of identity, shadow, dealing with the masculine, that element, that sexuality is one of the rawest expressions of the masculine or the feminine.
Yeah.
So when you say, we talk about feeling it in your balls and sexuality, you mentioned BDSM, you mentioned all these different terms that make me squirmy. Ah. Oh, I don't want to talk about this. That's just another version of a reluctance to deal with something that cannot be ignored. It's literally what gives life.
Yes.
Literally,
Yes.
people are embarrassed about the sexuality and urges and desires, and the shadowy side of that, I think, is almost a no-go area now. I will not acknowledge that there's a dark part of me when it comes to sexuality. And again, in those same 3 conversations I mentioned, it was bizarre. They happened within 2 or 3 days. That topic of BDSM or domination or playing out sexual fantasies in a consensual way to try and get a deeper understanding of why you have these feelings in the first place and empower yourself and empower your partner. I heard that in 2 other places within 2 days as well, and I didn't initiate the conversation.
So I'm going to speak to that a little bit, because I think it's actually important, because the reason that for me that I get uncomfortable with sexuality or with any subject is because there's a part of me that just doesn't want to go there because I don't understand it. So I'm going to use an example here with BDSM in a very, very simple way. So I got interested in BDSM with these power dynamics in the context of what I was exploring around masculine and feminine. Go ahead.
Could you just explain BDSM for someone who may not know what it is?
Sure. So so bondage, domination, submission, sadism, and masochism. Yeah. So it kind of covers a lot of shit there.
Yeah, it's broad.
It's broad. So I'm going to go with more specific stuff here. So I was interested in shibari. Shibari is a Japanese art of bondage in Japan. So people can tie up each other, okay? So that was what I was interested in. And I was also interested because there were parts of my own domination side of me that started to come to the surface in my own sexuality. So I wanted to explore this. And I wanted to explore it with whatever, men or women. But what it turned into was an understanding of the masculine and the feminine. And what it was, as I started to practice this with people who are consenting to being tied up, when I started to tie people up and hold that space, the power and the presence and the beauty of having the privilege and having the trust of another person to be able to really support them in their state of vulnerability and their state of being able to relax into my own sense of presence and my own sense of holding them was incredibly powerful. And I started to realize the beauty of what the masculine, of that consciousness, of that holding, and how that supports another person to be able to really drop into the deeper, vulnerable parts of themselves. It's incredibly beautiful. Now, we can tie people up and we can do all the other stuff as well, but I was interested in those dynamics. And as a person then who also likes being tied up as well, as a person who likes to be in my feminine and being able to drop into being fully held by another person, it's incredibly potent, incredibly beautiful. And actually, we're stepping in to the severities of these two energies that are trying to play out in life. So yes, there's BDSM, there's unconscious BDSM where people just playing out fucking shadowy shit on other people. And even if there is consent, I've seen violation of stuff. I've seen that stuff out there. But if we really step into this with a sense of curiosity, there's a lot to learn. And I really started to integrate and own my own sense of presence and power as a masculine being as I started to embody it, as I started to play with it. And I started to really check in with the response of the person that I'm tying up. How are you receiving this? How is this for you? You know, and understanding in myself as I receive that of being tied up as well. It's incredibly beautiful to be held by someone else. So it's incredibly beautiful for the feminine to be held by the masculine in full presence. And she can really drop into that sense of love and that sense of receiving, you know, whether it's in men or whether it's in women, because we're not in competition here anymore. We can be fully ourselves with these two energies.
Yeah.
Is that
it does, and I know that's an extremely challenging and uncomfortable thing for people to listen to. I think
maybe
it is definitely because it challenges me.
Yeah.
You know,
so what comes up in you? That's what I mean.
Yeah, I'm trying to be aware of what comes up in me. It makes me uncomfortable.
Sure.
And I'm thinking if I was listening to this podcast, be like, what the fuck is Dan doing here? It was this guy coming on.
We can edit it out later.
Yeah, well, it definitely won't. I'll probably edit more stuff in. I know it's uncomfortable in me because it is a raw, representation of everything else we spoke about.
Sure.
The shadow,
Sure.
the stuff that's inside me,
Sure.
the stuff that you do not explore because it's embarrassing or it's physically repressed.
Yeah.
Because of culture, because of religion, because of yourself, because of a lack of understanding, because of everything we spoke about. And that's why I thought it was really important. And you pointed it out to me, to have the context of the conversation we've just had before we had this particular part of the conversation.
Sure.
Because now I know, having had this conversation with you, and the listener knows what that means.
Yes.
What you've just explained to me is not this guy is a weirdo who just wants to act out his sexual fantasies. That's a very shallow thought for people.
Yeah, and there are people out there, like, we need to be very, very careful.
There are people out there who do that.
Yeah.
And to not at the risk of I'm not an expert in any of this, but somebody who hurts another person, there's an element of that in there as well. There's an element of unacknowledged darkness and potentially their own trauma, and maybe they've been abused themselves, and all of this stuff mixed up. But there is an element of it that they haven't explored this, and it comes out in ways you can't predict.
Yes.
It comes out in aggression and violence sometimes.
Sure.
It comes out in sexual abuse.
Yeah.
You've alluded to the fact that sometimes it can come out in what started as a consensual act, and someone can lose control because they haven't acknowledged that that's what this is. They haven't gone in with the intent of we're trying to explore something here. My reaction, my response is discomfort, because this is not a conversation I'm used to having. But it fascinates me because it's inextricably linked with everything we've just spoken about.
Yeah.
And in a lot of cases, it's one of the most raw expressions of that. A relationship between two people, man, woman, woman, whatever, is a physical acting out of the emotional, the desire for connection, the desire for intimacy. Obviously, there's a reproductive drive there. There's all these drivers and desires, and we don't understand the vast majority of them.
Yeah. So listen, just to say, there is conscious sexuality. If anybody wants to explore this stuff, do it safely. If you have this desire, like, I really want to feel, I really want to understand, you can be explored. I lived in a community in England called Osho Lila, and they're not only sexuality, but sexuality was accepted. You know, we live in a society where sexuality is not accepted. We can't have these conversations. We can't talk about this stuff. In Osho Lila, then there was conscious sexuality. So it was like conscious kink. You know, how do we get spanked? You know, consciously. What does that mean? You know, there are many people out there who want to explore these things, but it feels very unsafe. You know, so it's not about being unconscious and just like doing all these desires that come to us. What's going on here, and how do we create safety, and how do we create enough consciousness and conversation with the other person who also wants to explore this thing? But once we start to really, you know, as I said, the gift of that to me was really owning a real power within me. And I also, I dealt with a lot of shadows, and I still haven't fully moved through all that. At some point, I stopped tying people up because there was a violence and aggression that was coming through me, that I was scared of my own power. And I had to look into that over a number of years. I stopped tying for a number of years. But there's an invitation in that, like, how do I own that part of me? What was going on in me? You know, so that's the key piece of this, of being very conscious, going down the route of conscious sexuality, going down the route of what's going on for me. And not, if we lose consciousness in that, then, you know, we're going to be acting out more shit from our past. You know what I mean? So it was real learning for me and real beauty for me.
It is fascinating, and it is challenging.
Yes.
Fascinating and challenging. And there's one final topic I want to cover with you on this, in this round, before I let you go, because I'm very conscious of keeping you
well,
here.
We also need to speak about sexuality itself, you know, in terms of semen retention. Is that what you're talking about?
That's literally what I was about to ask you.
Great,
yeah,
great,
100%.
great.
Yeah.
Okay. So this is kind of, as far as I'm concerned, this is kind of leading up to this. Okay.
Yeah.
So if we go back to the idea then that the masculine polarity is down in our Dantien, in our hara, however we want to refer to that, it's down in that deeper part of us that we as children in Ireland were told, don't go there, you know, don't put your hands there, don't play with that, any of this sort of stuff. So I've done a lot of exploration in terms of like going into that area and recognizing the healthiness of really owning my own power. Now, the semen retention thing is an understanding that ejaculation, the fluid of semen within the masculine body, is the most potent fluid that we have. There's incredible amounts of power in that fluid, semen. So whenever we ejaculate as men, we expend between 2 and 5 million sperm each time. Now, in the context of our own body and our own health, that's an incredible amounts of energy. And they're all potential lives. If each one of them, well, actually, it's not true. But if a large number of them hit an egg and an ovary, then it could create a new life. So that's why it's such an incredibly powerful energy. And if you think about the idea of coming back to nature, whenever say vegetables or flowers or whatever, whenever they go to seed, they direct all their energy towards seed. So they don't worry about the leaves. They don't worry about growing any more leaves and photosynthesis, any of that. It's all directed on seed. And that's a biological need for the plant because it needs to procreate, needs to move forward. So we put that into the context of a human, as a man, the amount of energy that it takes for the body to create 2 to 5 million semen each time is massive. And so the body will redirect energy towards the production of semen because it's so important biologically. Okay? So as a teenager, when I was like masturbating like 2 or 3 times a day some days because I was bored, the amount of energy that I'm putting onto tissue paper and throwing down the toilet is massive. And in the Chinese systems, they say that we're brought into this world with a certain amount of energy. So whenever I'm masturbating or ejaculating or whatever, I'm expending this energy and I'm actually taking away from my life force energy, And just to say as well, like I'm not advocating non-ejaculation, and we'll get into that a little bit as well. What I'm advocating here is an understanding of how ejaculation has an effect on our bodies. And as we get older, it has more of an effect on our bodies. When I started to get into my 30s and so on, I used to get hangovers. If I ejaculated once or twice in a night, then the next day I'd be like feeling a bit off, like my mood wasn't there, my energy wasn't there. And putting it into the context of like footballers and so on, they're really encouraged, don't have sex the night before with your partner because you won't be on it the next day, So the impact of ejaculation on the body is that it really starts to drain resources from health, from our sense of vigor. Now, I've been practicing ejaculation choice now for about 10 years. So in terms of my own sense of power, my own sense of vitality for life has increased exponentially since I started to choose. Now, I will say ejaculation can be incredibly beautiful when you share it with a partner. And this is not easy to do this stuff, you know what I mean? But there's an understanding that ejaculation primarily is about procreation, But actually, whenever we start to expand our sexuality, that we can not ejaculate, but we can have incredible amounts of pleasure and actual orgasms in the body without ejaculating.
Okay.
So we can start having energy movement. We can start having it. So like as I went on this journey for 10 years, we developed this capacity then to have these orgasms within the body without ejaculating. And so then we don't lose our erections. We can continue then with sex or masturbation, having this full pleasure in the body. So from there, then you can have multiple orgasms, as can women. You can have full body orgasms, as can women, because understanding that sexual energy is actually an energy in itself. So once we start to separate ejaculation from orgasm, then we can have, and what actually happens is because the rhythms of men and women are different, women tend to be slower sexually. There's a bit of they like foreplay. I don't want to use the word they, but there's a slowness to it, and there's a slow build up. So actually, for a man's sexuality, then we get very, very hot very, very quickly. Full erection, full like, oh, I'm into this, And this is coming back to the polarities. So the masculine polarity then is down in his hara and his dantian or in his balls. I'm going to use that very, very lightly. It's not literally in our balls. And then for a woman, then she gets activated in her heart first. It's connection for her, And so men and we come to each other in different ways. A woman really wants to connect first. And a guy who's coming straight to a woman sexually, she's like, no, back off, mate. Because she wants to be activated in connection first, because that's her polarity, And this is how we're attracted to men and women. I'm going to use this loosely. We can also say masculine and feminine. 2 men together, one masculine identified male will go to a feminine identified male, and these polarities will still play out. You know what I mean? So there's an understanding then that the feminine she wants to connect first, and then the masculine, then he wants to connect more sexually, from his genital area. So this is how these energies are then playing out with each other. And I've lost my trail of thought now.
No, it's again an uncomfortable thing for people to listen to if they're not used to this.
Yeah.
But I've been not that I've been fascinated by it. I have seen a lot of conversation around semen retention as an energy maintenance redirection piece. But I've gotten an overwhelming sense that most of the stuff I've seen is bullshit, because it's becoming. There's a lot of people now, specifically online or on Instagram, who are becoming coaches and wellness coaches and health coaches, and maybe have a fitness background or personal trainers, and they hear about something like semen retention,
Sure.
and they say it.
Yeah.
But there's like years of understanding and
Yeah.
to actually understand what and why you're doing. I've also seen many people, because I'm in the scientific world as well with the medicine and all that kind of stuff, and sports and performance, people who completely discount it, but they discount it the same way everything else is discounted in this world. There's no science to support that, hence it does not exist.
Yeah.
And I'm in a space now with my life where it's like I've experienced many things in my life that the science does not, that there's no science for, because again, it's that arrogance. We think that something, if we don't have papers for it, is impossible, or if we do have papers for it, is completely defined and definitive. And I'm like, absolute horseshit. Yeah, it's handy to have some science and some guidance sometimes for certain things. I'm not a science denier by any stretch of the imagination. However, with something like semen retention, most people now will see this narrative of there is no science to confirm this, so it doesn't exist. And I'm like, I don't know about that, because I've heard too many people say what you've said there, who have tried it and had
this is the point.
Transformational
This is
results.
the point here. I'm not advocating this is for everyone.
Not at all,
At all. What I am trying to do is promote awareness around this, of the impact that ejaculation can have. For me, in my own experience of that, whenever I was having sex with my partner and so on, and then whenever I ejaculated, going from a moment 5 minutes before feeling highly connected, highly loving, highly touching, highly alive, and then to feeling dead, I'm like, I just want to get away here. I just want to fall asleep and disconnect. You know what I mean? So that's the direct impact that ejaculation can have on me. So by cultivating ejaculation choice, where I can have sex with my partner and then at a certain point choose, okay, let's just leave it, and retain that sense of fullness, that sense of really feeling connected. You know, and that's what it is to me. It's a sense, whenever I ejaculate, there's a sense of emptiness in me, you know, as a deep emptiness. And sometimes, I don't know about for all men, but there can be this sense of my mood kind of goes low. The next day I'm just kind of not on it. But being able to connect with someone, have full orgasms, be able to share and really go in, because, this is what I was actually missing before. When we have different rhythms as men and women, so by the time a man has come up to full peak and then ejaculated, the woman's just getting started. If we can start to ride the waves of orgasm or the point of no return and so on, then men and women then start to come, the women coming up slowly, the man's riding this wave of coming close to ejaculation. And then the man and the woman start to meet at this point where they're both kind of riding this wave. And this is where real healing happens then. Because if a guy is able to stay and not ejaculate, then he's able to cultivate this masculine energy within his body, which he's bringing to the woman. And she has the possibility then of going on this deeper journey. So we go on this deeper journey together. So it expands sexuality as well, away from 15, 20 minutes of sexual enjoyment, because we have this framework of okay, get her off, I'll get off, and then I'll get to sleep. You know what I mean? Let's really break out of that. And when we start to step away from ejaculation, then it becomes a dance. It becomes a movement between the masculine and the feminine. And within that, I've been with plenty of women who take on the more masculine role. They're holding me down the bed. They're doing what they want to do with me, And so we also get to play with those polarities as well. And there are many, many women who are quite masculine sexually. So they'll want to act that out. So we get to play with that a little bit more, because we don't have this objective or orientation towards ejaculation. So I'm basically advocating my experience here, and I'm advocating other options. If we can develop ourselves in terms of not having ejaculation as a goal, then we can really start to open up to different ways of connecting with our partners. And for me, when I take away that goal, the goal then becomes how do I go deeper with this other person? How do I really like cultivate this energy in my body, this energy of beauty? And the thing is, like, sexuality many, many years ago, like, because the problem is we've lost the sacred in sexuality, and we've lost the sexuality in the sacred. So religion doesn't even look at sexuality, most religions. And then within sex itself, it's become like just a way of getting off on each other. But sex was always very, very sacred. And, you know, when you look at the Tantra traditions and so on, sex was very much about touching the divine. So when we really start to kind of move away from this linear focused, let's just get off on each other, and start moving into this dance of sexuality, then we get to experience something very different. And so that's one part of me in terms of pleasure and so on, and connection, and like, how do we like cultivate that? And then the other part is like, if I'm able to retain that semen and it's having an impact on my mood, it's having an impact on my sense of well-being on a day-to-day basis, then I'm very happy to ejaculate whenever, like once a week or whatever, if I have that choice. Because I know the impact it's going to have on me. But the less I'm ejaculating, the less I'm running from this point of depletion. If we're constantly ejaculating, the body's never able to catch up with itself. This is an awareness piece. This is not about saying anything.
Yeah,
I run courses on this, and we go into this in a lot more detail. Well, what is the physicality of that? We look at the Taoist tradition in terms of how they circulate energy and how we can, because if we're not ejaculating as men, there's also the potential of running around just being horny all the time, you know? So it's about how do we move that energy, and understanding that sexual energy is something that can be moved. And we think about the idea, the reason that we ejaculate is because we're building up energy in the groin area. And if that energy isn't able to be expressed or moved in the body, then it has to go out because it's too powerful. And the other piece of this is the reason that we end up being addicted to pornography, or that we end up like ejaculating a lot, is because sexual energy is life force energy. It's very attractive. You know, when I see a woman walking down the street who's moving well, who has this flow, who has this stress or whatever, it's incredibly enticing. And there's a beauty in that as well. I know there's a negative part to that also, but I think in the purity of that, it's incredibly enticing. So it's a life-giving energy, you know?
Yeah, I also want to offer some complementary nuance to what you're saying as well there for people who might be struggling with the energy aspect of this, because sometimes it can challenge people when they hear energy.
Sure.
I'm open to this. I hear what you're saying, but I know it's challenging for some people.
Yeah.
In the context of the job I did for 12 years in the clinic, I used to see a lot of young men for physical reasons with extremely low testosterone levels and low libido, low motivation, low intimacy, low connection, erectile dysfunction, fertility issues.
Yeah.
And I don't believe that it's just the low testosterone or just the energy piece. I think all of this is so linked, but all of the signs point towards the same thing. This desperation for something, release. And there's a dopamine piece to this as well. That video I watched where the aim is the release. It's the dopamine hit. It's the effect on your brain. And that's at the expense of everything else that sex or intimacy or masturbation should be about. So this is definitely not about anti-masturbation or semen retention or anything like that. It's about understanding, just like, for example, let me use another example. Instagram or your phone is a tool and it's fine. If you understand the intent and you are not giving all of your energy and power that you could be giving into your own growth or your relationship or your children or your self-care, if you're not giving all that energy to Instagram's fine. It's just a thing. But we're giving so much of our energy, our desire, our connection, our need for intimacy, our need for stimulation to Instagram, to pornography, to our jobs, to the idea of money, that we're not investing that in ourselves. So in the context of semen retention or understanding your sexual energy, if you understand the context of what it is you're doing and why you're doing, most men, I won't say most men, I'll say many men, you alluded to it there, will feel a low mood, lack of motivation directly after ejaculation or the next day after they're masturbated a lot. They'll feel a sense of emptiness. So even that by itself, if you don't want to listen to the energy piece, you're going to feel better if you're aware of it. Not that if you're mindlessly masturbating because you're bored or because there's easy access to porn, you're going to feel like shit. If you are completely in control or aware of why you're doing what you're doing or having an intimate interaction with a person or masturbating, whatever, you're in control, you're empowered, and you can make decisions about what you do then. You're making a decision to practice semen retention or ejaculation control or whatever, but it's your decision. So you're
it's
empowered.
a conscious decision. You're
decision.
making a choice.
So this is an uncomfortable context for the exact same conversation we've had for the last 2 hours. It's consciousness and awareness and empowerment and understanding. And the sexual release and outlet is one of the rawest ways that this feels like it has to come out of you. And it's almost an urgency among men to have this.
Yeah, there's a few that I really want to respond to some of this stuff. The masculine wants to be free. In that moment when we ejaculate, we're like, gone. It's like, you see those slow motion in the movies and somebody gets shot.
Yeah.
Back against the wall, So we get to experience that total freedom, The other thing is that sexual energy is such a powerful energy that what happens in our bodies then as men, whenever we feel really horny, we get this, I heard over many, many years, it's like, oh, he just needs a good fuck or whatever.
Okay.
Or she just needs a good fuck, because we get this tension in the body.
Yeah.
Because this energy is starting to knock against our emotions. It's starting to knock against those parts of our psyche that we haven't dealt with. You start getting angry, like deep anger. You start getting like, there's irritation there. There's frustration, But actually, if we start to use that energy and understand what's happening in that context, we use that energy for healing us, and we can really start to work through these blocks in the body and what's going on for us. But we're so scared of like this energy that's happening in our body, and we don't know how to hold this desire to want to have sex and let it do what it's supposed to do within our body, either be circulated or let it show us, the parts of us that need to be healed. So we're taking all this energy that's knocking against our emotions, and we're like, fuck, I don't know what to do with this thing because it's really powerful, and we're getting rid of it. And that's really important to recognize what's happening there, because that's power that we're getting rid of because we don't know how to manage that power. And through Beth, through understanding the Dantian, through understanding circulation of energy, we get to cultivate that power, use that power in our lives, and use that power sexually and ejaculate if we want to.
I think that's a key point to round this up. It's not about not ejaculating.
No.
It's not about this practice that's going to radically transform your life. It's about an awareness and understanding of the tools, like this is a tool that you could potentially understand or explore.
Yeah. That
could improve your energy management, who you are as a person, and by extension, your relationships, your intimate encounters, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah. Like, the men that I've worked with so far, like having the feedback of like, this has majorly affected my connection with my partner.
I've heard a lot of that. Yeah.
And, so, it's just about recognizing. I just think it's more tools for the toolkit. You know what I mean? There's no right way. That. I do also believe, though, that there are fundamental shifts in if we start to integrate. And this is my overall arch of who I am in the world, is like, what are the fundamental things that we don't understand in this life? And ejaculation choice is one of those. Men's circles is one of those. Women's circles is one of those. Initiation is one of those. Rituals is one of those. Community is one of those. So this is another small part in a bigger picture that can have a major impact on society if everyone chose to have a better understanding of what ejaculation is. Simples.
That's a great way to put it. Before I let you go, Mr. Niall Graham.
Yeah. Go to the toilet because I'm desperate.
Perfect. We'll be done in 60 seconds. Where should people go to explore this more? If they want to reach out, they want to contact you. Do you have resources? Do you have courses?
Yeah, well, I've chosen not to be on social media. So you can check out my website, niallgraham.ie. I'm doing lots of courses. I'm doing like a community breathwork online once a month for men. Brilliant. So that's free. That's about bringing men together just to explore breathwork, explore like how to connect with our own deeper sense of consciousness, to cultivate that within us. Towards the end of March, then I'm going to be doing an in-person breathwork. It's going to be called, Strong Warrior, Gentle Heart, which is about cultivating the connection with the masculine energy and how that supports us then to drop into more tender parts of our own heart. So that's going to be a 4-hour workshop on Saturday at the end of March, and continuing doing grief rituals. And then ongoing then is this mentoring piece, which I'm always supporting men and women with what is emerging in their own souls. How do I support them to step into, their own curiosities around sexuality, around what's going on in their lives. And as I said to you earlier on, a lot of people are going through reorientation, a transition, threshold that's trying to appear in their lives, and just offering a sense of support for that. There's no advice given. It's about really acknowledging what is trying to emerge in their souls. And that's what mentoring is for me. It's about really holding up a mirror to a person's own soul about something that's already within them. I don't give anything. All I do is give reflection and an acknowledgement of this deeper story that's trying to emerge. And then the other piece for me is I think it's important that we create more men's groups within Ireland. And as I said, it's part of my mission to create more support for men. So I'm going to be doing a 6-week online course, which is how to start your own men's group.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
Wow, that's really helpful.
Around ritual, around safety, around understanding how to create this. Yeah. So this is important. And, there are other organizations, there's MKP out there, there's Tribe and so on that you can be part of. But for me, it's about, I just want people at ground level to be able to say, listen, I have 5 or 6 guys. We want to get together. We don't really know what to do. We don't know what these containers look like. We were a bit scared of what may happen. So that's the 6-week course then will be about supporting men with that and having ongoing support as well. Because once we get over a basic sense of men's group, then it's like, well, how do we do process work? We may be able to filter people. And there's myself and many other men in Ireland who are like supporting the emergence of the Irish masculine. It's not only Ireland. In England, I deal with a lot of men in the UK as well, but that's my mission in Ireland. How do we support more men's groups here? How do we support a better understanding of masculinity here? And how at some point down the road do men and women step together in circles and start to acknowledge the pain and the hurt that's been caused between them, and that we're all victims of this patriarchal society.
Wow. Teach a man to fish, don't give him the fish. That's
exactly.
amazing. That is amazing.
Exactly.
Niall, thank you so much. I know we spoke about some really deep, complex issues there. We probably only scraped the surface of most of them, but I feel like it's a really, really good introduction for people.
Sure.
To give context, to give understanding. It was really challenging. It was challenging for me, but I knew that's what it was going to be when we spoke. I genuinely really enjoyed it, and I'm just so thankful that you took the time to come up and have a conversation with me.
You're really welcome. And just really enjoying your questions and enjoying the conversation that happens between us, because there's a lot that comes through me whenever I hear questions from you, and I just love this space. I love the fire on the wall. So thank you so much for the coffee and the croissant I'm about to have now as well.
You're very welcome. And you can be guaranteed there will be another knock on your door. So part 2 is on its way already.
Excellent.
Thank you so much.
Okay, thanks, Dan.
And folks, there you have it. That is the end of part 2 of this 2-part whopper episode with Mr. Niall Graham. Thank you so much for listening, and thank you, Niall, for such fascinating and interesting conversation. I will see you in the next episode.